What does a metal fabricator do? How can they help a small business or a manufacturing company? And what should we look for when we select one and engage with one? Today on Small Business Talks. We've all heard of metal fabricators but what do they really offer small business and manufacturers? What benefits do they offer to my business, and why should I consider, engaging with one? And what should I know about metal fabricators to choose one? To help us better understand these questions, we have John Nelson from ESCP in Davenport, Iowa. John, it's great to have you on the podcast today. So my first question is what do metal fabricators do?
Well, thank you, Neil. I appreciate being on. Custom metal fabricator is a person who takes metal or steel, carbon steel, and shears it, saws it, cuts it in some form or fashion with a laser or whatever manner they do it in, and then to make a developed blank. And with that blank, then you would form whatever, with the proper engineering and knowing what we're making, we can use brake dies or press dies and make a part, whatever part, however a person designs a part, we can make it. We already have the equipment in-house. Generally, we have most of the equipment.
And I think that was going to be my next question, was going to say, why would a business or a manufacturer contact you, especially if it's a manufacturer, if they already have, some equipment? Is there a benefit to, contracting out parts of things, or we have a new product? What can you do to offer to help them?
It's the same for an OEM as it is for a mom and pop shop. We already have gone through the expense of purchasing the equipment that's needed, to custom metal fabricate, whether it be a shear or a saw, a laser, turret press to punch holes with, brake presses to bend with, deep dies or presses to form metal with, and as far as go to deep draw the metal. And then we have, weld lines. So it's expensive endeavor to get into that business, as well as the metal fabrication. And we also have a medium-sized machine shop to do machining. So if you need parts intricately machined or just holes drilled and tapped, we can do that as well.
So John, I'm a company, or I'm a small manufacturer, and I've never contracted with a metal fabrication company. What should I be asking? What should I be looking for, in choosing a metal fabricator?
Well, that's a great question. Let's just say that you're an OEM like JMTC at the military, people who make military vehicles, construction vehicles, agricultural vehicles. That's basically, that's metal fabrication. Lots of times they want to assemble it, so they outsource the parts to a guy like me who has the equipment that's needed to laser cut, bend, form, drill, paint, ship, and deliver, components to their assembly line. So, instead of having to have all those different businesses for all those different parts that they need to have made to assemble their vehicle, they outsource to companies like me. Maybe I wouldn't do all the work. It would be spread out amongst, several custom metal fabricators. And if you're let's say if you're a smaller business, it's the same thing. If you're selling something or you want something made, fabricated out of metal, you need to go to someone who has a shop to do that. And the best thing, is to look online and look at the reviews, and then call the people and talk to them on the telephone. You could call them, but a company like ours will always be happy to give out references if they need them.
One of the things I know that I noticed on your website, and I'm wondering if it's something people should look for, is your ISO certification. And maybe you could say what that actually means when people see that. What does that mean about an organization like yours when you're ISO certified?
So our ISO certification 9001 2015 is current, I believe, until 2025. But it's a standard of quality. So we can't do business with some companies, like Caterpillar or other Ford, Honda, a lot of companies. We can't do that. We can't even do work for them unless we're audited and we either have an ISO certificate or we work to that standard. But with having that certificate, they already know that we're audited twice a year, and we hold our quality system to that standard, as well as our on-time delivery. All of that's rated, measured, and reported.
So if I'm a small business or a manufacturer and I'm looking for a company, an ISO certification is something I should be, it kind of tells me that you have a standardization of quality and that you've met things rather than just saying we're quality. It's kind of a standard that shows that you meet a certain level of quality, correct?
See, a lot of people don't know me. They don't know us. They don't know the standard that we work to. So in a new customer, if you can prove to them that you're ISO certified 9001 2015, then that proves that you have been audited by a registrar, in this case, Perry Johnson. They come in and do a 2-day audit and make certain that your procedures are up to that standard. So the good thing about it is that if we don't know each other and we didn't grow up together, I'm a man of my word. When you see my ISO certification, it's like saying, these are good guys, use them.
Excellent. So thinking from the aspect of I'm a new company, I've never approached a metal fabricator, or I've never looked to outsource some of my work to somebody. What are things that I should be prepared to talk about? What are things that I should ask when I contact, or how should I prepare to get in touch with a company like ESCP?
Well, there's quite a spectrum here. I mean, we make parts that go on cars, trucks, tanks, and then we also make we have 2 core competencies here at ESCP. One is to make reusable shipping racks, containers, carts, baskets, tables, things for material handling. And then the other one is to make component parts for our OEM customers. So it would matter who you are, like lots of times but it would just matter from which industry you're from.
And are there expectations that people should know about, like should they be discussing things like what the turnaround time is, what is the process? I guess what I should probably ask first is, you when you meet with them, are you just expecting just a print, or do you talk to them, understand their situation, kind of help them out with those kind of things?
So let's say you looked at my website and you call me and you want to talk about a project. Of course you want to know the price of the object, and we're selling steel here. That's metal fabrication. So it would depend upon how we can buy it. Are we going to buy a truckload, or are we going to buy one sheet? So the lower volume parts will always have a higher per piece cost than the higher volume parts will. It's all based off the price of steel, and then of course, we have our costs: lights, gas, labor, salaries, insurance, all that kind of stuff. So we're a medium-sized custom metal fabricator, and we do a fair amount of work for large OEMs. So we're not the cheapest in town, but our work is guaranteed.
That's a good thing to hear on something like that. One thing that I saw on the website was that you do metal stamping, and I know we've had a discussion about that you specialize like in deep draw and the ability to hand transfer.
That is a very good question. Depending if you're going to have something formed, like the hood of the truck cab or the fenders, or, something metal that's going to be formed, you need to do it in a press with a die. So the geometry first has to be approved and handed over to us, and we would have to send it to a tool and die maker to quote a die, using that geometry to make certain that we can make a part with a good part with repeatability. So, there would also be if you need be, and most people do, if you're going to do large runs, is you would not only buy the die, you would also get a check fixture to make certain the part that comes out of the die is correct. So that's in a stamping press. A brake press is a little different. I can make one bend, if I just have to put a radius in something or put two bends in something, then I can run it across, by hand, we can run it across the brake press. And going back to the stamping press, when you call our equipment hand transfer, that means that we don't have a robot that picks up a blank out of a magazine and nests it into a press, and the feelers on the press say it's in the right location, and then it just goes down the line. They suction cups pick it up, they just keep going. Ours is all done by hand transfer. We pick up the developed blank, nest it into the die, pull our hands out, put them on two buttons, and the press cycles up and down. So the difference in there is that hand transfer is a slower cycle time, but it's for lower volume parts. And that's what we are. We're a low volume service part provider to all these people that we deal with in the OEMs that I mentioned earlier.
I noticed you offer precision laser cutting.
We have
There seems to be a big word in the industry right now, and it seems like there's a lot of things. If you could maybe just kind of describe what laser cutting, why it's used, or what the advantages are, and how do you handle laser cutting?
Well, we have one laser right now. It's a Cincinnati, and it will cut up to, half an inch. So anything from half an inch down, we can laser cut on that. The advantage of laser cutting is that you nest a sheet of steel with the parts on it, and then when you run across a laser and it cuts out the parts that you want cut out, and utilizing getting the best yield of the sheet of steel, and then that part would go into a brake press or a stamping press and be formed. But the old way to do it is to shear it or blank it, and there's a lot more scrap involved in doing that. This way we get the best yield and utilize the material in the best way is if you laser cut it, because you can CNC program it to nest it perfectly, and you fit each part in there, and you use as much of the sheet steel as you can.
So you're actually not having to use as much material, and you're actually reducing costs because you're not throwing as much scrap out.
Yeah, we're using the same size sheet, getting a lot more parts out of it. Right, that's exactly right.
Makes sense. One of the other things, and I think we also talked about this, was about you have kind of an interesting production welding situation, and maybe you could talk about that, about how you can expand the size of your welding department. And I want to, this is kind of a two-part question. One is talking about production welding and how you handle that with the way you have your welding department structured. And the last part would be something interesting we talked about the last time, was about the different types of welding, where you weld to spec or weld to print, and a lot of other companies, to reduce costs, will just do I believe it's called stitch weld. I think you said they do like a stitch weld or something like that.
Well, I don't want to sound like I'm talking bad about anybody, but some people, when times get tough, people try to find a way to cut corners, and lots of times they'll shorten the length of their welds. Whereas ESCP, we take pride in the fact that we weld to print. If the print says they want a complete weld, then we complete weld it. We don't make 1-inch stitch welds in the same 6-inch. If it's a 6-inch piece and we welded all 6 inches, somebody with stitch welding will put 3 1-inch welds in there and save 3 inches of weld.
That would affect the integrity of the weld, I would think, wouldn't it?
It certainly could.
So that's something, again, if this is something that's important to your business, or you're going to be lifting something heavy. I know like you make glass racks and things like that, and that's heavy duty stuff. So that I think would be important, that when you contact a metal fabrication company like ESCP, that they would want to know something like that and know that they're going to get, the not just the quality, but the integrity, that what they're building is actually going to be, of value.
I know exactly what you're saying. And once again, I don't want to call anybody out there saying that they're doing anything illegal, but if the print says, they want a complete weld, or a 1/2-inch fillet, or, per the instruction, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the print.
And back to the original part of the question of the way the production is set up, that was one thing I was noticing, is that you kind of have your welding set up so that you can actually have it in different shifts or in different areas, so that if people come in with a big order, you can expand or contract the way you do welding.
Yes, we have 34 weld stations, 34 weld stations on 4 different weld lines. So I have the capability to move those around, or we do. And, if a job, like somebody ordered 4,000 baskets 6,000 baskets from us, tubs, steel tubs, steel sided, 48 by 48, 30 inches tall. And so, with that, we just constantly keep that going. We can dedicate a line to that. And then another customer had a large rack order, and we dedicated a line to that. But that still leaves 2 lines for us to weld, two lines for production welding, and 3 or 4 other stations for other types of welding. Maybe lower volume, or maybe high volume, but only takes 1 person to make 1 piece. So you can do it at a station. So we have the ability to basically customize our weld shop to the workload. That makes sense.
And that would be important, because if I'm a manufacturer or a small business, is one of the concerns that people come to you with is, do you have the time to do this? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the people to do something like this?
Well, that is always a challenge, is to get, good people. We have 2 shifts here. 5 days a week, we work an 8-hour shift, and 4 days a week at second shift, we work Monday through Thursday, 10-hour shift. So that's the machine shop, the paint department, the weld department, the stamping department, and or the custom metal fabrication department, which is shears, saws, lasers, presses, all that stuff. Let's say we're making a large order for somebody, and we have the people, and someone else comes in, and we can open up another station to do their work, then that's what we'll do.
Makes sense. Let's talk about, I think one of the things I'd like to bring out is also, let's focus on ESCP now, because in researching this and getting ready for the podcast, as I go out and look at, what are companies, there's a big range. There's metal fab can fall into a guy doing welding out of his garage to a large company to be able to do things like that. And I would probably say, what would you say, and ESCP's been around for a while, and you've got a good clientele base, what would you say the secret to your success has been? Or why do people keep coming back to you? What would you say the one thing that makes you kind of stand out from other companies?
Well, quality and on-time delivery. We have really good people, and we treat our customers, very well. So we have customer service reps that we assign to different customers. We have a quoting department or a sales department who brings in RFQs, requests for quotes. We get them quoted by one or more estimator. Then we get that approved through the approval committee, and, making sure that we're charging the right price and we've included everything. And then it gets signed off on, and the salesman gives the quote to the customer. And if they have questions, they'll call us, or if they're satisfied with our quote, they'll send us a purchase order. And in that quote, let me say this, in that quote, there'll be a lead time. So if we're looking at the material that we have to buy, what the grade is, what's the availability, and how much we can get. And so a lot of it has to do with the availability of material. And then of course we have our workload. So, whichever area it has to go through, they all have, their 1, 2, 3, or 4 week lead time or more. We've gotten here, I hate to say this on the podcast, but the truth is that we have sometimes been so busy in the time that I've been here that our lead time has been out to 16 weeks.
And I think that's important for people to understand is what it actually takes, not to scare off anyone, but realistically understand that, one of the things you need to look at is the turnaround time. I have an idea or I have a project, and what's a reasonable turnaround time on something like that. And I think the other portion of it is just, what are, like you mentioned, things about like what type of steel, the print, all the specs. From what I'm hearing from the conversation, you're very thorough. You've got a plan, and that's something I would think that'd be important to a company, is that you kind of have you have the process down because of your experience. What it's going to take to be able to do these things.
That's exactly right. And it's my job as a salesperson, sales manager, when I'm talking to a customer, is to ask the questions I need to ascertain what it is I got to do so that I can get it quoted properly. And when I report back to the customer, I want to give them as much accurate information as I can, because they're going to plan off that, and just like, you're only as good as your word. So you want to make certain that what you tell the customer, is right. And, and if it changes, you got to tell them right away. And then, that's what we try to do. We try to, because things change all the time. Sometimes you can't get a driver to drive a truck to get a load of steel. What I said earlier is that we have to buy the material, and there's a lead time for that. They might have to roll it at the mill, and then you have to get a driver and a truck underneath the load to get it to your place. And then, lately it's been very hard to get a driver and a trucking firm to pick stuff up in a timely manner.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up, was in this, as we have people talking about this and saying, what can I do with a metal fabricator? What can they do for my business? Is understanding all these different elements, so that they're getting a little bit more knowledge of understanding, what to expect. How do they interact with a metal fabrication company, and what should they look for, so that they don't go into it and then have certain ideas, and they have more of an understanding of this is what to look for. I think you've already hit some of the things, is like, number one is ISO certification shows that you don't know who I am, and it's kind of a standardized, inspection, or a standard that you've met to be able to do that. And then the whole idea of, putting the planning and having the estimators kind of lets you put your entire production process so that it matches with what they're looking for. But if a company is looking for things, looking for like, consistent production, or they want to look for, what should I be looking for in a company? These are definitely some of the traits that I think they should be looking for.
Well, if someone is looking for a custom metal fabricator, let's say that you realize that you need some reusable stacking racks or shelves, or some load tables to for whatever reason, and you've never had them made before. It's good to know who you're dealing with. So, looking for someone who's ISO certified is important, and or maybe your dad is, maybe somebody who's in that business, and that would really help, because if they can't do it, they could tell you who could. And that's the way that I am. If somebody approaches me and I can't do what they want, I tell them where to go. I recommend, I know people in the industry that do other things, because we work together all the time. So, I don't, I like to you know, do my friends favors just like they do me favors. I get recommended a lot by, you know, my vendors and other people, and I do the same thing for them.
That's good to know. And I think that's important for companies, because if they come in with something that maybe it's not exactly, you know, the area that you work within, that you can, you know, make those kind of recommendations, and you're really looking out for the customer. And that, I think that's important for people to realize that, you know, that's something to look for in a company, is that, you know, you understand the project, you get to really, you ask all the questions up front so that you're getting them exactly what they want, and there's no surprises, I think is what it comes out to.
I know this might sound a little cheeky, but my customers over the last 16 years, 17 years here have become my friends. I mean, we're friends. You know what I mean? So you know, I help them, you know, support their families, and they help me support mine. And it's, you know, it's a matter of trust.
So any last parting things on this? Anything? I'm looking down through things. So I'm looking at your capabilities. I'm on your website right now, and I'm looking at you do the contract manufacturing. So you actually run production for some parts for some companies.
Yes, we do. We do.
And you do the precision laser cutting. You do the welding. You do metal stamping. CNC machining. I know we talked briefly on that. So you also have the ability to do machining on parts and components.
That's right. That is correct.
What is flow drill and flow tap?
Flow drill and flow tap is a system designed by a company called Flow Drill, which instead of drilling a hole in a part, let's just say that you have a bracket that you're putting together and you're going to screw a mirror to it.
Right.
Okay, like for a car. So that's the rear view mirror, or the, you know, on the side of the truck. So on the bracket itself, instead of drilling a hole and putting a nut and a bolt in it, we have a ceramic bush that we get going real fast, and it makes a real hot bush, and then the point drills through and makes a hole, and then we come back in with the tap. And now if you keep going with that video there, you'll see that you make the weld nut part of the tube. So the instance of failure has been reduced to almost zero.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You see, because if you make that, just to drill a hole with a CNC and put a nut and a bolt in there for the mirror, that nut could come off or that bolt could break, it would work loose. But if you heat up that metal, push it all the way through, and then come back with a tap and tap that bush that that, you know, half-inch bush that you've left through there, and put a thread in it, you can drill that, you know, drill your mirror or screw your mirror right straight to the structural tube.
Very cool.
I hope I explained that right.
But I think you did.
But there's on our website, there's a great explanation of flow drill.
And then the last thing I saw, I just want to touch base, we kind of touched base on it earlier, was and that's the other thing I'm noticing, is that you can really take this from beginning all the way to end. I mean, you can actually fabricate, you can belt, you can stamp, bend, you can machine, and you can even finish the part afterwards. You can even
cradle to grave. We go right from A to Z. So it comes in the door in a sheet of steel, and it leaves in a package all ready to go.
And I'm looking here and I'm seeing 850-foot conveyor line, and
that's a powder coat paint line. That's right.
Okay.
That conveyor is 850 feet long. That gets it through a 2-station pre-wash. It gets it through it goes through a drying phase, and then goes into the paint booth, 6 foot by 12 foot. Yeah, 6 foot by 12 foot by 12 foot, I think it is. Or the other way around. Anyway, once it goes through there, it gets painted, then it takes a right turn, goes in, takes it to the oven, takes another right turn, goes down 50 feet, makes a turn at the end, comes back 50 feet. So it's in there, you know, for 100 feet at 410 degrees, and it bakes on whatever we put on there.
And that seems to be the choice now, of especially for a lot of metal fabrication, is powder coating versus just, you know, the old-fashioned paint.
Yes, powder coating is you have to take a knife to scrape, you really have to hit it hard, and then it just, gouges into it. It's part of the steel. It's not like it won't, I mean, if you don't pre-treat the material properly, it'll peel right off just like wet paint. But, if you treat it, if you do the proper pre-treat and you paint it and bake it on right, it's not coming off. You can bake it into walls.
So that's why you have the cleaning first and the stations. It's set up that it's designed
Right.
to get the surface prepared to take the powder coating
That's
on.
exactly, you have to treat the surface of the material first. That's right.
Excellent. So if somebody were to say, okay, I have an idea, or I have a project, or I'm a manufacturer, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
www.escp.net. And if you'd like to call me, you can call 1-800-397-9105 and just ask for John Nelson.
Okay. Well, John, thank you very much. This has been an exceptionally good podcast and very enlightening as to what metal fabricators do for people.
I hope it was. If anybody has any questions, have them call me. This is there's a lot of information to put out in a short amount of time, but I hope I did justice.
Well, I think we definitely covered a lot of areas, and I think it'll be very helpful to people that are kind of going down this avenue and say, how do I go about this and what can we do? So I think it was overall a very good podcast.
Along those lines, I would like to say, if you're out there and you're looking for a custom metal fabricator, if you call me and tell me what you're looking for, if I can't do it, I'll tell you where to go. I know people in the industry all over the country.
That's a nice offer, because I think that to me says a lot, because when a company says, if we can't do it, we just hang up the phone type thing. And that says a lot about your integrity and you as a business, that, hey, if we can't do it, we can recommend somebody that would be able to do it. I think that's a great point to add on there.
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks, John. You have a good afternoon.
Good afternoon.